Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Glittering Bell Jar. We are in season 2 and covering The Half-Blood Prince, the best book in the Harry Potter series, according to your hosts, that is. Speaking of, I am here with Miss Valerie. How are you? I can't hear you.
Sorry, I hit mute because these kids are playing outside because it is such a nice day that I don't want to have them in the background of the entire recording. And we're going to leave that in the final cut because that is the truth of podcasting on a nice day. I cannot open the window. So there's a fan on in the background and there are kids playing and you may hear them. It's like having a puppy. It's kids in the neighborhood. Anyway, I'm good. It's warm today.
Amazing. Okay, yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You know, it has cooled down a little bit today, not by a ton, but I love having the air conditioner blasting. Very blessed to have an air conditioner and not to care what my bill looks like whenever it comes. Sean does, but I just tell him to be quiet and don't worry about it. So everyone in my house is always cold. So yeah, well, I'm good. I'm nice and cozy. My
Yeah, I see you got
herbology
your
sweatshirt.
herbology sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I've definitely worn people who've been watching the season, if you're a repeat listener, you noticed a couple episodes ago, if you watch on YouTube, I was wearing my Harry Potter Christmas sweater, my Christmas jumper, because I just pulled it out one day and I was like, this looks so cozy because it was a cooler day. And I was like, I don't care that it says Christmas on it. It's a Harry Potter sweater and I know I'm recording tonight. I am putting it on. Yeah.
I love the dedication.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as a reminder, if you are not a repeat listener, it isn't your first time, we are reading Harry Potter and the Half Blood Prince backward. So, you need to go back and start at episode 1 if you want this to make any sense. And the best part is, it is one chapter per episode. They are shorty episodes, they're usually 20 minutes or less. We have a couple that are really short. I can't even say 15 minutes because I think we had one that came in the 12-minute mark. It happens sometimes. There's just not as much to go through. And we're not going to waste your time just chattering away. Well, we do that sometimes, but not always. Usually they're under 20 minutes. And yeah, it's a great way to spend a little bit of time. If you've got to commute, if you've got to go for a run, if you got to walk a dog, if you are cleaning the toilet, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing with us, we appreciate it. And we're going to just jump right into chapter 17.
Let's do it. So, chapter 17, A Sluggish Memory. Harry, Ron, and Ginny all arrive back to Hogwarts after Christmas break. Hermione, who had arrived hours earlier, gives Harry a parchment requesting Harry go see Dumbledore. In the office, they dive into two memories, one from Morphin, Tom Riddle's uncle, on the night that Voldemort came to visit him. The same night that Voldemort killed Tom Riddle Sr. and his parents. That same night, Voldemort killed Tom Riddle Sr. and his parents, Voldemort's grandparents, all which he placed into Morphin's mind that he had done instead of Voldemort. The second memory is of the evening at Slughorn's office, in which Tom Riddle asks him about Horcruxes, a memory which has been tampered with. The real memory, which we know about, Slughorn still has, and Dumbledore tasks Harry with retrieving the memory from Slughorn himself.
And on that auspicious intro, here is the final sentence of the book. As Harry closed the study door behind him, he distinctly heard Phineas Nigella say, I can't see why the boy should be able to do it better than you, Dumbledore. I wouldn't expect you to, Phineas, replied Dumbledore, and Fawkes gave another low, musical cry. Mm-hmm. Can we talk about that real fast? Since we're right there, and it's not going to make sense if I jump around later.
Fawkes or on Phineas?
Fawkes specifically. Okay. So Fawkes makes that sound then, and he also makes it when Harry tells Dumbledore about the story with Scrimgeour, which is in the next chapter we're going to cover, moving backward in the book. So we haven't talked about that yet. Fawkes makes the sound when Harry says, I told Scrimgeour I was Dumbledore's man through and through. So to me, when Fawkes does that the first time, it's like a sound of loyalty. Like, oh, you're loyal to Dumbledore, and I acknowledge that because I am loyal to Dumbledore as Fawkes. But then he makes the sound when Dumbledore is loyal to Harry. So I think that Fawkes has a special connection to Harry. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but I just noticed it was the only two times Fawkes makes that noise. And it's when Harry's loyal to Dumbledore and when Dumbledore is loyal to Harry.
Oh, yeah, it's like a moment of love, and Fawkes responds to that because Fawkes is all about loyalty, and those who are loyal to Dumbledore, Fawkes is loyal to them. So that makes sense. That's an amazing catch.
Yep,
I
that's
love
it.
that.
I couldn't leave that because it was just a little one, and it's in that final sentence, and I knew it wouldn't make sense if we tried and jump around to it later.
Yeah. It's hard for me to decide if I want to jump to Dumbledore and Harry's moment, because I did love that moment, and that is what you're talking about. And they just have a beautiful moment. But you know what? Maybe we'll save that till later, because I do want to talk about. It also has to do with my intro. I would like to talk about Phineas, and it's not so much about Phineas, but it is about the magic of portraits. And I find them very fascinating. And maybe everyone knows this, and I didn't, but I didn't quite understand portraits. Is that like almost like a Horcrux? Is it a part of the person's like energy that was left behind? I mean, I know it's not a Horcrux, but bear with me, in like a good Horcrux. Or is it, just I don't know. I wasn't sure. So I did some digging, and it is, of course, a painter who paints it, and then you have someone put a spell on it, and usually it is the person. So, like for instance, if I had my own painting, I would have it done, and then I would magically enhance it. And basically, it says it doesn't have to do with, so the portraits can do various amounts of things, and it just depends the power of the witcher wizard that was painted. And it also depends on how much magic was put into the painting. So I'm just going to read. I actually went onto Pottermore, and I'm just going to read exactly what it says, because I find it super fascinating, and I want to inform you guys, educate some people. Some magical portraits are capable of considerably more interaction with the living world. Traditionally, a headmaster or headmistress is painted before their death. Once a portrait is completed, the headmaster or headmistress in question keeps it under lock and key, regularly visiting it in its cupboard, if so desired, to teach it to act and behave exactly like themselves, and imparting all kinds of useful memories and pieces of knowledge that may then be shared through the centuries with their successors in office. The depth and knowledge and insight contained in some of the headmasters' and headmistresses' portraits is unknown, but the incumbents of the office and the few students who have realized over the centuries that the portrait's apparent sleepiness when visitors arrive in the office is not necessarily genuine. Did you know? I just think that's so cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'd never really thought, and it is kind of weird because the portraits are they're so like soul-like. They're like Riddle from the Diary, which was a Horcrux, or like a ghost. Like they have so much knowledge of their representation, who they're representing. So that you have to teach them that. That's pretty interesting. So, okay, that brings up a really important question. We know Dumbledore has a portrait in the office. Do we think Snape has one?
I want to say he does. It's at the end of the last book. Don't we see a picture of him at the end? Am I making that up?
I don't think so.
I think he does.
I don't
He was
even
a
know if Snape
headmaster.
would have had time to have his portrait painted in a year. He was only headmaster for a year, and he was killed unexpectedly.
I don't know.
And he wasn't old. I don't either. If you know, dear listener, let us know. Oh, Bree's checking. You'll find out and Bree will verify what you know.
Yeah. I can't help myself. Yep. He does have one, according to Harry Potter.fandom. And it was in the headmaster's office at Hogwarts. I almost feel like it was in the book. I don't know. But anyways, yes. According to Harry Potter.fandom, he does have one. And so the reason I got on this was because of the fat lady. And it talks about how she got drunk. And that's why she was so like tired and perturbed, that like they were bothering her and being so picky about the password, was because she had gotten drunk over Christmas break. And I'm like, what? So her portrait was very cool, so she could eat and she could drink, which were something that the fat lady loved to do when she was alive, and security. Those were her three main things. So those were imparted to her, but that's all she could do. She couldn't necessarily have in-depth conversations with you the way that a lot of the headmistress and headmasters do.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, very interesting. So I'm so curious about like, okay, we'll come back to that when we get to like Sir Cadogan, right? Like the knight with the fat pony in book 3 and Prisoner of Azkaban, because I feel like we meet these different portraits throughout the course of the series, and now that we know the magic of them, it's very interesting to like look at each one we know and figure out how that makes sense of like what they were imparted with by the person who was painted into them.
Yeah. Fascinating, right?
Yeah, thank you. That was a good lesson. I was just sitting here absorbing it.
Good.
Interesting. I have a couple things that are kind of all over the place in this before we dive into the memories, which I'm sure we can talk about a little bit more.
Mhm.
The first thing is that I love right off the bat. By this point, Ron is already not wanting to be with Lavender. Now, he and Lavender got together right before Christmas, and it is like, I don't know, maybe a few days after the new year, and he's already like trying to ditch her. And they don't break up until, I don't know, well after his birthday, which is in March. Like they stay together for so long because Ron won't break up with her. I just was thinking through the timeline, and I think this as we get toward the end of this book, I will do another timeline of like putting some of the important points in time on a timeline and going through them like we did in Deathly Hallows. And Ron and Lavender's relationship is going to be one of those things because it's like, why does he take so long to break up with her? I mean, the only thing that does it is Felix, and that's like in April, like.
Well,
Come on, Ron.
speaking as a fellow Pisces, horrible at breaking up with people, but also he is a teenage boy and they snog a lot. So that was probably the
Yeah.
main answer we can
The
lend to it.
compensatory benefit that he sticks it out for.
He probably tries to, and they start snogging, and he's like, I'll do it later.
Yeah, this could be worse. I could be not snogging, in which case, I'd rather be snogging. Let's see. The next thing I had actually was a note on apparition. So last episode, we were talking about how they're taking apparition lessons, and they're in Flitwick's class and they're talking with Seamus, and Ron says Harry's already apparated. He actually got to go on side-along apparitions with Dumbledore, or I mean somebody. And I thought it was really interesting that this was like such a novel thing to these folks. Like, so what happens? Like, whoa, Seamus, Dean, Neville, and Ron all put their heads closer together to hear what apparition felt like. Why don't parents take their kids on apparition? Is there a concern like with a toddler that they're going to splinch themselves in the process? Like if they're not good at following directions? Like, I don't know. It just seems odd to me that you have this spread of young magical people from a variety of families. And of course, Harry hasn't apparated. Seamus is muggles. His mom's a witch. So that seems like maybe she would have. Dean comes from a muggle family. Neville was raised by his grand. So she probably wouldn't have because that doesn't seem like how she traveled. But I just thought it was interesting. Ron's from a magical family, but they use flu powder, not apparition. I don't know. I wondered why none of them had ever apparated with their parent or parent figure that they have, that if they had one that could.
So, remind me, doesn't Malfoy apparate with his parents because he makes fun of the Weasleys for going by the flu network?
I don't remember that. I don't know that they address how the Malfoys get to Diagon Alley.
But they make fun of them using the flu network because they have all the powder, all the charcoal on their noses and stuff.
I don't remember that. Is that in the movies?
It is, but I think it's in the books too. It's in a movie, the Chamber of Secrets?
I don't remember that at all.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But then, yeah, Malfoy might be then. Yeah, not Malfoy would be competent at apparating. You'd think more. He'd know what it feels like, which seems to be how Harry becomes good at it in such a short amount of time, is that he knows what he's aiming for. He's felt it before. Because the description last chapter about like what apparition is supposed to be, like focus your attention on the destination and then deliberate or whatever on like stepping into nothingness or what. It's like, I don't know, what are those are words, I don't know what that means. Like, how am I supposed to deliberate on becoming nothingness? This is not real instruction, dude. Anyway, I don't have a wand, I don't have a hoop, maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about.
No, it seems like even in the chapter, all the kids were looking at him like, what am I supposed to do? Like, you're a horrible teacher. But that is why I feel like it reminds me of driving, because they have a special instructor come in. Everyone has to pay extra. Where driver's ed, you had to pay extra. You had to decide if you wanted to do it, where it's like optional. And I don't know, it just kind of reminded me of, humans or muggles version of, apparating. Way less cool, but.
Yeah, I was taught by my parents, so I did side-along apparition. We did not have any driver's ed requirements where I grew up, so parents taught their kids.
Wow, good old Alaska.
Also, when I was a kid, I grew up in Alaska, and you at the time could learn to drive at 14.
We could get farm licenses, so if we wanted to. So if we drove like a truck only on our own farm, not on the highway or on dirt roads, or if we had like a tractor license or something. But
actually, what's funny now in Alaska, Fun trivia, they've raised the minimum age for learning to drive, but the age for learning to fly is still 14. So you can learn to fly a bush plane and you can be licensed as a pilot in Alaska before you are allowed to have a driver's license.
Interesting.
Fun trivia for all of you out there. Because that's why
Love that.
last episode I made the analogy, is it like flying or is it like driving? Because, that's a thing that people in Alaska do, is they fly places.
Oh,
Anyway, back
yeah.
into the Wizarding Worlds.
Yes.
I love in the memories. I love that this ties into Goblet of Fire, where we learn the origin story in Morfin's memory of the the house in Great Hangleton. The death of the Riddles, the mysterious death of the Riddles, all of those details. I love that gets pulled in. I mean, again, it's one of those threads that just runs deep in the story that you see. Here finally it's explained in book 6, and it was introduced at the beginning of book 4. That's my favorite kind of detail to catch.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Let's see. What else about the memories? I didn't really glean a whole lot from it. I mean, other than the fact that Voldemort and we keep going back to this, but the big three. I'm sorry, not the big three, the other big three. We have Snape, Voldemort, and Harry. And even though Harry only had love for that year, it I feel like there is a difference whenever you grow up, and even after being abused for all that time, he always knew that his parents loved him. And then especially when he goes to Hogwarts and learns that his mom died for him, uh, even just knowing that there was that kind of love, I just feel like it had to made a difference, because Voldemort goes and he knows that his father disowned him and left his mother, and his son. He left them, and so that is just the biggest form of rejection, is to be rejected by a parent. And so,
Mm-hmm.
it just shows the difference that it made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like in Snape's case, he has parents and they're unloving. And
Yeah.
like that's obviously damaging to children. And then Voldemort doesn't even know. He has to go learn what happened to his parents. He has to go to learn the story of his mother dying and that she just gave up on him basically, and then learn the story of his father abandoning them. And then Harry, yeah, he doesn't have his parents, but when he finally learns any piece of it, and I will say, like, his parents in the story the Dursleys tell him, they don't leave him by choice. They get in a car accident. Like that's the
Mm-hmm.
official story he's told. So
Yeah.
again, he doesn't assume they don't love him or they left him. He literally survived an accident they didn't. And so he gets to carry the idea that his parents loved him, even if it was for a short time. And neither Voldemort nor Snape ever had that as part of their personal narrative.
You know what it kind of reminds me of is how Sirius, when he was in Azkaban, this horrible place, which was kind
Mm-hmm.
of Harry's childhood, he
Mm-hmm.
stayed sane. Sirius stayed sane in Azkaban, knowing that he was innocent and that he didn't
Mm-hmm.
deserve what was happening and that he had a reason to leave. And that's kind of Harry. Like he knew that he was loved, and maybe deep down knew that he didn't deserve those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's a very good observation. Nicely done.
Thank you.
The only other thing I had in this chapter is the reality that the Ministry of Magic should probably have standardized ways of interrogating people who confess to crimes. As you know, Brie, I'm a true crime podcast fan. I love listening to true crime podcasts. And I thought it was very strange that the Ministry of Magic would take at face value someone confessing to a murder. Because if you know that people can affect other people's memories, it should be standard practice to do legitimacy, to lift any memory charms, and to give them Veritaserum to get a true confession. You should never take a confession in the magical world at face value, because it's not likely, it could be a false confession, and you have means of determining that. It's not like in the US where sometimes false confessions happen and it's really hard to find that out, and like you
Mm-hmm.
listen to confession tapes and it's like, you have to try and figure out why a person confessed. They can just
Mm-hmm.
do magic and know if a person has truly committed the crime or not, and they don't do that with Morphin. They just take him at his word and chip him away. And it's like, to me, I guess another example, and Harry kind of mentions this, I think, when discussing it with Ron at the beginning of this chapter, of the ministry being incompetent, of being
Mm-hmm.
a government, of doing what government does, which is sloppy and undetailed work in many ways. I mean, Harry has lots of complaints about that. Because to me, this is obvious. And I think Harry comments, he's like, they didn't even question him. And he's like, no, why would they? He was known to hate muggles. He was known to have a problem with this family. He was mentally unwell. He'd committed crimes before. But it's like, but you could have just done a few charms and known for sure. And wow, then you would have caught out that there was this guy named Tom Riddle out there causing trouble, and we wouldn't have this book.
Right, yeah. They're just lazy. I think that just is another example of them being, lazy and incompetent. And if they get a confession, why investigate any further?
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of occupancy, so you had me paying attention to Dumbledore performing occlumency on Harry. It's in their office when Harry first gets there. He's mad because Dumbledore will not pay attention to his story about Malfoy. He doesn't. He's like, Harry, don't worry about it. Like, what I have to, basically, they both feel like what they're saying is more important. And you can tell he uses occlumency here. Let's see. Harry sat there feeling mutinous. How would it feel if he refused to permit the change of subject? If he insisted upon arguing the case against Malfoy, as though he had read Harry's mind? Dumbledore shook his head. Ah, Harry, how often this happens, even between the best of friends. Which I love that, even between the best of friends. Each of us believes that what he has to say is more important than anything the other might have to contribute. He totally read his mind.
Mm-hmm. As though he read Harry's mind. No, he probably did read his mind. He's
Yeah.
that he could just dabble into, being able to tell. Also, he's been a teacher a long time and he knows how petulant teenagers can be.
Probably. And Harry's probably sitting there like,
yeah, exactly. It's probably like a well-educated guess with a little bit of magic sprinkled on top just to be sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, good observation. I didn't really catch that. I jumped straight from that to the next paragraph, which you read about the quote where, each of us believes what the other has to say. What we have to say is more important than what the other might have to contribute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good catch.
Yeah, thanks.
Do you have anything else?
I got it from you. I got it from you. We talked about it in the beginning, but I really did love Harry and Dumbledore's moment at the end. If you don't know, basically, he talks about how the Minister of Magic came and talked to Harry, and Dumbledore says, or Harry says, he accused me of being Dumbledore's man through and through, and Dumbledore says, "Oh, that's so rude of him." And Harry's like, I agreed, I am. And Dumbledore's eyes get watery, and Harry, obviously uncomfortable with feelings of love, looks down at his feet until it's safe to look up. And they have this like touching moment where he, just basically says, what does Dumbledore say? Like, oh, that means a lot to me, Harry. And I just, that was very sweet.
It is a sweet moment between the two of them. It is to me, it's as Harry's becoming more of a equal, more of a peer, that they're building a relationship that's more than just teacher and student, that Harry and Dumbledore begin to have emotional connections beyond just the academic one they have.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. He literally just, moments before said people have arguments even between the best of friends, kind of, relaying that they're best of friends.
I like ending on that.
Yeah, me too. Cool. Well, thank you guys for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed this chapter. This was a good one. It is one of the reasons I love this book, just these moments between Dumbledore and Harry and learning all this backstory. It's very, very fun. So we hope that you also enjoyed it. If you did, or if you didn't, and you want to tell us about it, please head to your podcast player of choice. We're on, I think, every single one that exists, even the small ones. So go on there, give us a review or give us a rating, and then give us a review if you please. It does help us a ton. So if you enjoy this podcast and you want us to keep going, please, please, please go on there and give us a review. It's all we ask of you. Well, and if you want to, you can head over to our social media, Belljar Pod. We're on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. You can also email us if you like. Valerie has an incredible website.
Yep. The email to reach me is podcast@followthebutterflies.com. Followthebutterflies.com is my Harry Potter blog. If you listened to last episode, you heard us talking extensively about candles and candle making. And if we get enough interest, I will start offering glittering bell jar-esque inspired Harry Potter candles over there that you'll be able to purchase and support the podcast. You can find all kinds of other stuff too, like costume making suggestions and recipes and travel guides and everything you need to know to have more Harry Potter in your life.
Well, cool. Well, we will likely see you tomorrow.
Yep. Have a good one.
Bye.